All right, welcome back, everybody. I'd like to talk about something that has hit a little close to home for us here, and that is the train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio. Which, if you've been watching the news, it's kind of been on the news. I don't think it's been covered like it probably should be. I know some of the channels are kind of covering some local channels, and a lot of channels on YouTube have actually been covering this. A lot even the national bigger channels. Um, but what I'd like to talk about, I'm not going to talk about the actual derailment so much. You can find all that information out, and a lot of that, you start getting into the chemistry of all the chemicals and what was spilled and things like that. That's kind of above my knowledge anyway. But what I wanted to talk about was kind of how this can kind of relate to preparedness, because we always relate preparedness with kind of end of the world scenarios and things like that. But in this case, this is actually something that hits close to home for many of these people and that are affected in the general area, because I know they've. I'm not sure the total, but I know they've within like I believe a mile or two of the derailment, and closed many of the roads and things like that because of the toxic fumes and just the danger from explosions and the fire and everything like that. So, um, what I wanted to touch on was some things that you know this can kind of bring to light some things that you might want to be prepared for, for such a for such an event. But that can translate to other things. But in particular, because this is such a pretty volatile situation there, it kind of brings to mind some of these natural disasters, and some of the responses by the government and things like that. Because if you think like me, I pretty much don't trust anything they're saying about this whole um, derailment. They're telling people that the air is safe, and I mean that just you'd almost have to be foolish to believe that to an extent. I'm sure you know maybe in some areas, but I would be a little concerned with right there at kind of the heart of this disaster, and possibly some of the long term effects that we may not be told, we may not know about. But it brings to mind, because you hear a lot of things when you hear about preparedness. You hear things like bug out bags and bug out plans and locations and things like that. And in such a case, I guess maybe having an emergency pack ready to go, because of in case of a disaster like this, because this is something that happens and can't really be predicted. A hurricane can be predicted, even a tornado at times can be. There's warnings and things like that. This is one of those things that kind of just will come on to people, and there's really no control over it. So what that's maybe one of the things I want to talk about is keeping some of these things handy. As far as I have an emergency pack, and maybe not necessarily a bug out bag. It's not like at some point you're probably going to be allowed back in your home, but maybe not. Maybe have some things handy as far as like prescription medications for one thing. If you have to leave in a hurry, maybe some. I've always said that I think you should have some of your important papers maybe on a jump drive, or a little USB stick or something like that, to have, because you don't know what's going to happen, especially if you're right in the vicinity of that. An explosion could take out your possibly your home, and so having some of those things on hand, but also having the water supply there is probably going to be contaminated for a while. So always having bottled water on hand. Because you don't know, like I said, you don't know what's going on. And even though you're probably going to be evacuated there, it might be some stuff that you want to take in your truck or car, when you're leaving, because, depending on where you're going, the immediate area is going to be affected, not even just right around the area, but the area around that, as far as, probably hotels are going to be filled up with people that don't have places to go. Maybe take some extra supplies if you're going to stay with a relative or something. If you're going to show up there, show up with something, to actually help the situation, not make it worse for them. And, maybe if you have some food stored that you can take, if you have some, freeze dried stuff, you might have to help out some neighbors, things like that. If you have, and if you're not in the area, but you have family that's going to be maybe coming to your house, once again, it's good to have some extra things on hand. So it actually brings me to some things like, maybe you should think ahead a little bit about an evacuation plan if this is an occurrence. Maybe you live near a nuclear power station. Maybe you live near an area where these kind of accidents could happen, or maybe near a chemical plant that could possibly catch fire. maybe have a plan in action for, if that does happen down the road again. It's something to think about, to maybe have a plan in action. Maybe get a hold of a relative that's, maybe would be considered out of the danger zone that you could stay with. Maybe even keep a few things at their house. You know, there's a lot of things you're going to forget too. Prescription glasses. In addition to your medicine, if you wear contact lenses, make sure you have the stuff you need for that. Maybe some basic toiletry items to keep on, keep in a pack just to grab. Like I said, because if you're in an area like this and you're forced to go, maybe into a refugee center, as they would say. A lot of times it happens at a local school or maybe a church that has a large hall. That can tend to be overwhelming because there's going to be other people that are going to be in your situation, and they're going to, resources are going to be cut thin. So if you can have a plan so you don't get stuck in an area like, in a place like that, that's where a lot of, and problems can start there too, as people start to get agitated and, not knowing information and stuff. People will start to get upset. You probably, if you can avoid those areas, you probably want to do that. So those are just some things to keep. And like I said, moving forward, if you're even allowed back in your home, are you really going to trust your water supply? So yeah, definitely always keep water on hand. Water is always one of the most important things anyway, if you're being prepared as far as, if your food and your basic needs and things like that. So it's something to think about. Like I said, I didn't want to dive into the politics of this derailment and the response and things like that. I just wanted to talk about maybe, thinking down the road as far as, ways that you can, maybe make your life a little easier if something like this happens, maybe in your neighborhood. It may not be a train derailment, but it could be, like I said, maybe there's a chemical plant near, there's a fire, even a wildfire that you maybe, gets out of hand. It's many things, even weather related events. So, if we can take some things away from this, and even if you live near an area like that, you might want to consider keeping some like respirators or gas masks, for an immediate response until you can get out of that area. Always keep your vehicle fueled up. I always say try to keep a half a tank in your car at minimum if you can, but keep those tanks full in case you need to get out in a hurry. Maybe even keep some basic, some basic supplies in your car. So if you have to get out in a hurry, you can do that without fumbling around in your house. And don't forget your pets. So if you have to go in a hurry, a lot of people aren't thinking ahead like that. Keep a bag for your pets. Keep some pet food, some treats, leashes, maybe. If they need some medication or something, because a lot of people's pets are on, a maintenance medication. So definitely keep that kind of things handy. And make sure you remind your neighbors of that thing, of that too, also, because a lot of times people don't think of that. So just something to think about. Like I said, I didn't want to dive into it as far as the actual dangers of what's going on there, but this is a big deal, and especially in the area where I'm at. I'm only not too far from there. Not really so much in the danger zone, but I'm sure, flying over here, I'm sure there's going to be some fumes and toxic, God knows what in the air here. So, I guess it kind of remains to be seen because, like I said, a lot of things haven't been discussed here, and I've just kind of been watching, what I could find. I haven't dove real deep into a lot of these, but I know some of these chemicals were pretty dangerous. I know one of them was actually a biological agent used in World War One. I believe it was phosgene. I could be wrong, because I know there were several different ones. I know one was used to make PVC pipes and plastic and things. So not good stuff. And from what I understand, there's also a lot of effects of some of people's pets being affected. I've heard of some wildlife being affected. I don't know what to believe at this point. It's hard to believe because, a lot of, so be careful what you hear also, because people like to sensationalize things, and you're going to hear, of course, people want to be the first to report everything on social media, things like that. So be careful what you read. Do your own research first, and also do your own research before returning to your home if you're in an affected area like that. And that goes for any kind of event or disaster. Always make sure you don't rush back and put yourself in a danger zone. So, like I said, just some things to think about. Any comments, please put them down below. Any suggestions for people that might be able to read this in the area, or even if you have some updates, that are accurate, please feel free to share them. Please like this video if you got something out of it, and subscribe, share with your friends, and definitely keep posted if you're in that affected area. definitely, stay posted with the news, get as much information as you can, and be very careful with what you believe and in what you listen to, because like I said, just because it's the first thing posted on Facebook or Twitter doesn't mean it's accurate information. So like I said, if you're near there, please be safe. And as always, thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you next time.